folks. This is a tutorial where I will take you through different bits and pieces of MFT. This tutorial is very basic for MFT analysis, where we'll see only those important things what you should know when you are trying to analyze your MFT. In this tutorial, I'm using Ncase as always. In this tutorial, I'm using Cbarrow image. So if you want to use this particular image, everything you can follow the instructions. I will try to make it as simple as possible and obviously as quick as possible. Now, master file table. This is one of the key component of NTFS file system. I believe you all familiar with this. Master file table contains lots of different entries. In fact, each and every single file you have in your hard drive, master file table contains the information about each of them. If you remember, the very first entry of a master file table should be MFT itself, as MFT is a file. So MFT table should start with MFT file. It will also have MFT mirror, log file, and other files relevant to your whole NTFS system. Bitmap, one of those what we'll be investigating later on. But for time being, I will be concentrating only on MFT files. So what I did, I created a new case, opened C drive, and once you open C drive, very first file you will see here is MFT. Now, each of these entry within MFT will be divided or can be divided into two different parts. First, each MFT entry will have many different things, what I will call attribute, what is known as attributes. Now, each of those attributes are mainly containing information about that file, information like what is the file name, what time that file has been created, who accessed that file, what time that file has been accessed last, what is the access right for that file, who can access those files, things like that. So first part of MFT entry, I'm talking about MFT entry, will contain the attributes. Second part can contain the data itself. As you remember, if a file is smaller than 512 bytes, then that file can stay within the MFT entry, and we called it resident data. For this investigation, I will be mainly concentrating on different attributes. For data, yes, at some point we will also cover the data part as well. Now, regarding the attributes, there can be so many different types of attributes. I'm not covering all of those attributes really, but first and few important attributes such as signature, file name, file creation date, last access date and time, things like that. Those are the attributes I will be covering. In NTFS, when it comes to MFT record, each of those attributes been identified with one unique ID. For example, at some point we will see file attribute for information, we will see attribute for last access time, things like that, and we'll talk about the details when we see those points. Let's start the very first investigation. As I said, MFT is a file, but very first entry of that MFT will be the MFT itself. Now, look at this. When I have selected first few characters here, which is file 0, that's the signature. That's the signature of an MFT entry. Now, if I take you down there, after certain time, you will see lots of file 0. So whenever you see file 0, you will know that this is a new MFT entry. If you have 50,000 files and folders in your NTFS drive, then you should be seeing 50,000 file 0. Which just telling us that, hey, this is the start point of a file and you can gather lots of other information about this file. Now, before you start investigating the file details, very first thing we are talking about header information. So at some places you will know how big this MFT entry is. For example, if I take you to um, this section, I believe you remember this section, we are calling it file offset. So if I take you to file offset 28, I could go there by counting 0. Remember, this is starting with 0, so I could count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but I just came to file offset 28. Now selecting 4 bytes. After selecting it, right click, go to, and if I click on little endian, this is telling us 1024. This is telling us that the very first entry of MFT table is MFT itself, and this has 1024 bytes in it. Again, we have discussed about this in the past, that each of these entry by default will be 1024 bytes long, and for our scenario that's the case. Now you want to know where is the next attribute. You want to know more about the file, when the file has been created, who was creator, a couple of information like that. When you want to learn about, oops, sorry, let me sort this out. When you want to learn more about other attribute, I need to find out where is the start point of that attribute. Now if you select file offset 20, so this time I'm selecting file offset 20, and that will give me the details. So this is 38, hex value of 38. From here it's telling me that if I go to that particular hex value, I will be able to see next I will be able to see the next attribute. So what in real life, what you should do, take 38 and use a converter, use an online converter like x038. When you convert it to decimal value, you will learn exactly what is the number where you are looking for. Remember, this is hex value. You need to convert this hex value to decimal. Now I know that decimal value for this is 56. So what I did, what I have done, just I clicked on, I put 56 here, clicked on OK, and now I'm on 10. Again, this is a hex value. The way how we represent this hex value is 0x10, and 10, this is the hex value which is telling us that, hey, all the basic information about this file has started here, where we'll be able to find some other details such as file creation date, etc. What we'll see in a minute. So this was the very first tutorial. What we have seen in this tutorial is the file header. Every MFT entry, each MFT entry will have a file 0 as a signature for that MFT entry. If you select file offset 28 to 31, then you will learn how big this MFT entry is. And if you go to the entry file offset 38, then you will find out where is the next attribute start. Okay, I will stop here. I will give you some times to do this little practice, and then I will take you to the next tutorial to start the next task. Thank you. Previous part of the investigation, you have identified that if you go to file offset 56, then you'd find this signature, which is 10, hex value 10, not decimal value 10, and then you would know this is the attribute where you can get some information about the file itself, like creation date and time, so and so. So this part of the tutorial will try to identify some other details related to attribute 10, where first we will see how large this attribute itself. So this is the attribute, does contain some data. We want to know how many bytes are allocated for this particular attribute only. Then we want to know those information what we need to know for our investigation, such as when the file has been created, what time it was last modified, last accessed, things like that. Now, we have started our first attribute here. Remember, still we are in that entry, first entry. Actually, we are investigating the MFT file. MFT file itself has a large entry, 1024 bytes. We are investigating the first attribute for this file. Now, from here, this time, all of our calculation will be based in here. On previous investigation, obviously, you have started your investigation from here, which is file offset 0000. But now we are investigating something within the file, within one attribute. Therefore, everything we talk about should start from here. Now, you will find if you select these two file offset, I will request you to pause this video when you follow it. After pausing this video, you can get the file offset, actual file offset, which is file offset 60. I have selected file offset 60 and 61. If I right click on this, click on go to little endian, that will give me the number of the bytes as size of this whole attribute. So we are talking about file attribute which contains the basic information about that file, and this file attribute will be in size of 96 bytes. Note it down, please. This will be very important number, because when you want to move on to next attribute, then you need to add this number 96 with 56. So you already have passed all of these number before. Then you found that the attribute you just started, that has 96 bytes altogether. Whatever the number is, you can move on to the next attribute. We'll come to that point a bit later on. Now, one of my main concern is to identify when this file was created. To identify that information, you need to go to byte offset 80. For this particular file, you need to go to byte offset, I will select this, byte offset 80. And we need to select 8 bytes from here. Once you do that, remember we are looking for date and time. This is not a normal value, what you could get with little endian. When you are looking for date and time given by Windows, you click on decode, and then you click on dates and you click on Windows date and time. This is the date and time which is telling us what time and when this particular file has been created. So we found one piece of information from here. Right after this section, if you select next 8 bytes, so 7, 8, have I selected 8 bytes? Yes, I think so. If you select those, again click on decode, and this time what you can see, that's the last modified date and time. So first 8 bytes told us when the file was created, second 8 byte told us when the file was modified last. Now, if you select the next 8 bytes and again go to decode, that is the time and date which will tell us when this was accessed last. Very important information. Whenever you are trying to present something somewhere, you should have this evidence somewhere linked, that what time this file was created and what time this file was accessed last. So what we have done so far, from very first part, we clicked on MFT, we looked into the file signature, and from there we try to find out where is the first attribute started. We came to the first attribute, and after looking into first attribute, we try to identify how big this attribute is by selecting these two. And once we are done, we have started selecting different bytes. So first block was selecting byte of set 80, and from there we have selected 8 bytes, clicked on decode, found when the file was created. Next 8 bytes told us when the file was last modified, and very last 8 byte here told us when the file was last accessed. Now I will leave you for a few minutes to do some practice. From previous tutorials, hopefully you understood about the concept of having different attributes. So far, we have looked into MFT file header, then we have looked into the basic attribute about this particular file. Now, next attribute we are talking about is attribute ID 30, which is name attributes. If you have a file which has a long name, 8 characters or longer, then file attribute, file name attribute, you should have two different file name attributes. For MFT record, we are looking for only MFT attribute now. For this one, as the file name is small, only MFT, and we have only one attribute. So by looking into this ID, which is 30, you can say that this is the name attribute. This is the start point of name attribute. Now, as you have investigated on previous one, again, 4 characters. So this time you will think that this is your start point of the investigation for this particular attribute. From here, we will consider this as 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you select next 2 bytes, that will give you the size of this attribute. Now see, this attribute's size is 104 bytes, which is different than previous attribute. Just from here, you can realize that different attributes can have completely different size, and that's the whole point of using MFT as well. Now, we need to look into some more details about when this file was created. Remember on previous one, we also saw on previous attribute investigation, we saw when that file was created. But this time we are seeing the same information within the name field. Yes, that's right. When you have created the file, you have given a name as well. Therefore, these two attributes should be having the same value. Now, let's go to file offset. Very first one I want to look into, 156. Sorry, not 156. I want to go to one particular field first, which is 242. And from here, actually this is the byte from where you will see the name of the file. So we are using the name attribute, but within this attribute there is certain bytes which will tell us what is the name of this file, and this is the name of this file. But if the file is longer, it will look a bit different. Where I've been to, file offset 242, just to see the name of this file. Now my next task would be to go to those bytes which will tell us about the creation date. To look at the creation date, I'm going to byte offset, file offset 184. And from here, as you did on previous investigation, you select 8 bytes. After selecting 8 bytes, you click on decode, click on Windows date and time, and that will give you the file creation date and time. And this should match, really this should match with the information you had on previous investigation. So as like previous one, again, you select next 8 bytes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you click on decode. That will give you the last modification time, date and time, and next 8 bytes. If you select next 8 bytes, that will give you the date and time when the file was last accessed. So a quick summary. Very fast, we started with a file header of MFT entry. Every entry will start with file 0. Then from here we investigated how big this MFT entry is, when is the next attribute. We went to attribute ID 10, which was the information about this particular file. And after investigating a couple of details there, we came here, which is attribute ID 30. And this is the ID related to the file name itself, only the file name, nothing else. From here, we saw when the file was created, and you will see that information matched with the information you found on previous attribute. I will give you some times to do some practice now, and then we'll talk about next attribute just a bit later on.